If you're truly educated and not just another ignorant servant, prove it, or leave before I humiliate you further." The billionaire laughed cruelly. The crowd chuckled at her expense. But what she did next left everyone in utter shock. She didn't flinch. She simply opened her worn leather folder, her eyes calm but piercing, as if holding a secret no one in the room could even imagine. A tense silence fell over the crowd. Everyone leaned forward, desperate to see what would happen next. The grand ballroom glittered under the sparkling chandeliers, the marble floors reflecting the soft glow of crystal lights. A string quartet played softly in the background as guests in designer gowns and tailored suits sipped champagne, murmuring in small clusters about deals, charity, and the latest gossip. Among the crowd he stood, the billionaire, a man whose name alone commanded respect and fear. With perfectly polished shoes and a navy suit that screamed power, he exuded arrogance as naturally as breathing. His laughter was like glass shattering, sharp, cold, and filled with disdain for anyone he deemed beneath him. Across the room, standing near the edge of the crowd, was a woman who could have been invisible if it weren't for the confidence she carried in the quietest way. Dressed in a simple black dress that had clearly seen better days, she clutched a worn leather folder tightly against her chest. Her hair was neatly tied back, her eyes bright and sharp, though the corners of her face bore faint traces of struggle and hardship. She wasn't here to mingle, to charm, or to impress the elite. She was here to observe, to learn, and to stand her ground if tested. It didn't take long. The billionaire spotted her immediately, his sharp eyes locking onto her modest frame. With a mixture of amusement and contempt, a smile curved his lips, cruel and predatory. Stepping closer, he drew the attention of the room with every confident stride, his presence demanding silence. He stopped a mere few feet from her, towering like a predator confronting a small, fragile prey. "If you're truly educated and not just another ignorant servant, prove it, or leave before I humiliate you further," he laughed cruelly. The words echoed across the ballroom, carrying the weight of mockery. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Champagne glasses were lowered mid-sip. The rich and powerful leaned in, curious to witness the confrontation. Some out of genuine interest, most out of the thrill of seeing someone put in their place. The crowd chuckled at her expense. Some whispered, "She doesn't belong here," while others laughed openly, enjoying the spectacle. But the woman didn't flinch. She didn't stumble, nor did she shrink back. Instead, she took a slow, deliberate breath and opened her worn leather folder. Her eyes, calm but piercing, met his, unshaken by the sharpness in his gaze or the laughter surrounding them. A tense silence fell over the crowd. The music stopped abruptly, almost as if the room itself had taken a breath. Everyone leaned forward, desperate to see what would happen next. The billionaire's smirk faltered slightly, just a fraction, but he quickly covered it with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Come on, prove me wrong. Show us that you're not just another failure clinging to a dream that doesn't belong to you," he jeered. She opened the folder wider, revealing a neat stack of papers, meticulously organized. Her fingers trembled slightly, not with fear, but with the intensity of anticipation, of suppressed energy waiting to burst forth. Every eye in the room was now fixed on her. Whispers died down into silence. Some faces showed curiosity, others disbelief, and a few mirrored the billionaire's growing unease. He had expected weakness, submission, or at the very least embarrassment. What he did not expect was poise and quiet confidence. She cleared her throat, her voice steady, measured, and surprisingly melodic. "You doubt me because of my clothes, my background, or my appearance," she said, letting her words echo through the ballroom. "But education isn't about wealth, nor is it about your approval. It's about knowledge, perseverance, and the courage to rise above judgment." A murmur ran through the audience. The billionaire's laugh, once sharp and commanding, faltered. He waved a hand dismissively, trying to regain control. "Words, words, words. Let's see some proof," he barked, his tone a mixture of impatience and threat. She nodded slightly, as if she had expected this. Then, with calm precision, she began to lay out the contents of her folder. Carefully annotated research papers, reports, photographs, certificates, and sketches. Each document revealed her intelligence, creativity, and achievements, all meticulously documented. Every page she revealed contradicted the billionaire's assumption, painting a portrait of someone who had fought every day against the odds to arrive at this very moment. The crowd gasped, heads turned, whispers erupted, and the room's energy shifted. The once lively murmurs of ridicule transformed into stunned curiosity. People began leaning closer, craning their necks to catch every detail. The woman's calm demeanor only heightened the tension. The more composed she appeared, the more enraged the billionaire grew, his arrogance beginning to crack. In that moment, the entire ballroom seemed to hold its breath. The power dynamic was shifting, and everyone could feel it. The mocking billionaire, who had expected to be the center of attention, was suddenly uncertain. The woman, quiet and modest, was commanding the room, not through wealth or status, but through sheer intellect and courage. And then, with a subtle smile that barely touched her lips, she whispered almost to herself, "Let's see who truly holds the power here." The room fell into complete silence, hanging on her words. The billionaire's laughter had vanished. The audience, once entertained by cruelty, now watched in awe, eager to see the next move that would either prove her genius or confirm their fears. The billionaire's smirk had faded completely, replaced by a tight-lipped frown. He stepped closer, his polished shoes clicking sharply against the marble floor. His eyes, cold and calculating, scanned the contents of the woman's folder, but he refused to let himself be impressed just yet. The crowd, sensing a turning point, moved slightly closer, eager to see whether this confrontation would be humiliating or legendary. "You think showing a few papers is enough?" he sneered, voice dripping with contempt. "If you're really educated, you can't just tell me. You have to prove it, here and now. I'll ask questions, and if you fail, you'll leave with your pride in shreds, and maybe I'll make sure everyone remembers how pathetic you tried to be." A ripple of laughter ran through the room, though it was more nervous this time. The guests were no longer fully at ease. They could sense something was shifting. The power dynamic was changing, slowly but undeniably. The woman's gaze never wavered. Calm and measured, she responded, "I expected no less. Ask your questions. I am ready." The billionaire's lips curled into a cruel smile. "Good. Let's begin then. Tell me, solve this puzzle first. A company's revenue doubles every year. In 5 years, it reaches $32 million. What was the revenue in the first year?" She flipped open a page in her folder, her pen poised, and worked quickly but deliberately. While numbers might have tripped up the average person, she scribbled calculations effortlessly, her handwriting precise. In moments, she looked up and said, $1 million. The billionaire blinked, momentarily caught off guard. Lucky. Guess. Next question. If you're truly educated, explain the concept of compound interest and how it can both build and destroy wealth over time. The woman smiled faintly, her voice steady and clear. Compound interest is like a snowball. It can grow slowly or exponentially, depending on the initial amount and time. It rewards patience, but if mismanaged, it can turn debt into a destructive force. Understanding it is not just about numbers, it's about discipline, foresight, and risk management. Murmurs of admiration began to spread. Some guests exchanged glances, shocked at the depth and clarity of her answers. Even the billionaire's assistant leaned in, whispering to a colleague, "Who is she?" The billionaire's eyes narrowed. He was no stranger to intelligent people. He had surrounded himself with some of the sharpest minds in the world. But there was something different about her, something he hadn't anticipated. His challenge was supposed to humiliate her, but now, each answer only made him feel more uneasy. He snapped, "Fine, let's make it harder. Explain the intricacies of quantum computing and its potential impact on global economies." The woman didn't hesitate. She began outlining the principles of quantum computing in simple, relatable terms, connecting the abstract ideas to real-world applications, faster problem-solving, encryption vulnerabilities, and potential breakthroughs in medicine and technology. Each sentence demonstrated not only her knowledge, but also her ability to communicate complex ideas clearly and convincingly. The room grew silent again, except for her calm, commanding voice. Eyes widened, jaws dropped. Whispers turned into audible gasps. The billionaire, who had expected stammering, confusion, or outright failure, now felt a twinge of fear. How could this woman, standing before him in a modest black dress, possess such intelligence and confidence? He took a step back, trying to mask his panic with forced laughter. "All right, smarty. If that's so, show me the real proof of your education. I want something tangible, something that proves beyond doubt that you are worth my time." A subtle smile appeared on her lips. Slowly, deliberately, she opened her folder wider, revealing a thick set of documents, diagrams, and a tablet. Her hands moved with practiced precision, as if she had rehearsed this moment countless times. On the first page was a carefully compiled portfolio of projects, inventions, and achievements, evidence of a lifetime of brilliance built from nothing. The crowd leaned in closer, craning their necks to see the contents. She held the folder, so that everyone could glimpse fragments of it, but the full extent remained a mystery. The billionaire's confident posture faltered. The smirk had disappeared entirely. He realized, perhaps too late, that he had underestimated her. She paused, letting the suspense linger. "You wanted proof," she said softly, almost a whisper, yet the words cut through the tension like a knife. "Here it is. But it's not just about what I've done. It's about what I can do, and what the world refuses to see because of prejudice, appearances, and assumptions." Gasps filled the room. The audience, previously entertained by cruelty, now hung on her every word, captivated by the mystery and the growing realization that she was far more than anyone could imagine. The billionaire's laughter had vanished entirely. He was no longer in control. The challenge had begun, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The woman, quiet yet commanding, held the upper hand, and everyone could feel it. In that moment, the room's energy shifted. The wealthy, powerful, and arrogant looked uneasy. The curious and observant were riveted. And the woman, she simply waited, letting the tension build, knowing that the next move would completely change everything. The room was deathly silent. Even the softest rustle of silk gowns or the faint clink of a champagne glass seemed to echo like thunder. The billionaire's eyes, once so confident and gleaming with arrogance, now darted nervously between her hands and the folder. He had expected fumbling, hesitation, or maybe the polite shame of failure, but what he saw instead unsettled him deeply. She leaned slightly forward, opening the folder wider, revealing a sleek tablet alongside carefully arranged papers. The first page displayed a document with her name embossed at the top. It wasn't just an ordinary certificate or a random award. It was a full dossier of her accomplishments, from patents and innovations to high-level research and publications in globally recognized journals. The audience's murmurs started low, then grew louder as realization dawned. This was not the work of someone just scraping by or struggling to survive. This was the work of someone brilliant, relentless, and underestimated at every step of her life. The billionaire swallowed hard, his usual smugness replaced by an unsteady tightness in his jaw. "That can't be real," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. The woman's voice, calm but commanding, cut through the growing whispers. "You wanted proof, didn't you?" she asked, eyes scanning the room like a spotlight. "Proof that I am educated, capable, and deserving of respect?" She tapped the tablet, and a projection appeared on the wall behind her, displaying her portfolio in full color, charts, graphs, innovative designs, and a series of technological blueprints that would rival projects from the world's top universities. The audience gasped audibly. Heads turned, whispers turned into audible exclamations. People began to murmur excitedly, trying to take in the sheer scope of her brilliance. Even some of the billionaires and corporate elites in the room shifted uncomfortably in their seats, suddenly aware that their assumptions had been completely wrong. She held the billionaire's gaze unflinching. "You laughed at me. You assumed, because of my clothes, my appearance, and my background, that I was ignorant, unworthy, dispensable. Yet here I am. Everything you mocked me for, the poverty, the struggle, has forged me into someone you could never expect. Someone you could never break." For a moment, the room seemed frozen. Even the orchestra had paused mid-note, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The billionaire's hands clenched slightly at his sides. He was still a man of immense wealth and influence, but for the first time, the illusion of control slipped through his fingers. Every question he had asked, every challenge he had thrown at her, had been answered not only correctly, but with grace, intellect, and undeniable proof. She opened a folder of personal letters and reports, showing how she had solved real-world problems, designing low-cost energy solutions for communities, creating educational programs for underprivileged children, and even consulting on innovations that had been patented internationally. Every document, every photograph, every note screamed achievement born from hardship, and the audience couldn't tear their eyes away. A gasp escaped the billionaire's mouth, this time involuntary. He realized she had done what he had thought. Impossible. She had taken his challenge and elevated it, turning the tables completely. She closed her folder with a soft, decisive snap, letting the weight of her accomplishments settle in the room. "This," she said, voice steady, "is what education truly is. Not titles, not wealth, not arrogance. It's knowledge, perseverance, and the courage to rise despite the world trying to tell you you're worthless." The crowd erupted, not with laughter, but with applause, cheers, and a standing ovation. The energy shifted palpably. Admiration, awe, and respect now radiated toward her. The billionaire, once the center of attention, now felt small and exposed. Every smug grin had vanished, replaced with the bitter taste of humiliation and regret. Even those who had laughed at her earlier now looked ashamed, realizing that they had been complicit in underestimating her. She had not only proven her intelligence, she had ignited a moment of social justice and empowerment that no money or influence could buy. As she folded her folder and tucked the tablet under her arm, she looked around the room, calm and collected. "I came here to observe," she said softly, almost to herself, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "I leave having proven that respect is earned, not demanded, and intelligence is not measured by the size of one's bank account." Billionaire could barely meet her eyes now. His laughter had evaporated, replaced by the uncomfortable realization that the world, and the room full of people watching, had changed in that moment. The woman smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly, a quiet victory that spoke volumes. She had not just answered questions, she had overturned assumptions, shattered arrogance, and taken control of the room. The power reversal was complete, and the audience knew they had witnessed something extraordinary. The grand ballroom once, echoing with the billionaire's laughter, had transformed completely. Silence had given way to whispers of awe, then soft murmurs of admiration, and finally to open applause. The woman stood at the center, composed yet commanding, as if the energy of the entire room now flowed around her. Every gaze that had mocked her minutes before was now fixed on her in astonishment. The billionaire's confident stance had crumbled. He shifted his weight from foot to foot, his hands tightening into fists at his sides. His arrogance, which had seemed unshakable, was now crumbling under the weight of reality. The power he had wielded over the room, the wealth, the influence, the fear, had evaporated in the face of undeniable talent and courage. He cleared his throat, trying to regain authority. Well, perhaps I underestimated you, he muttered, his voice strained. But no one paid attention. The audience had already shifted their loyalty and admiration entirely to the woman. His words felt hollow, almost pathetic, compared to the quiet authority she exuded. She took a slow step forward, the worn leather folder still in her hand, and spoke with a clarity that cut through the tension. "Underestimation is a dangerous thing," she said, her eyes sweeping the crowd. "It blinds people to talent, to intelligence, and to potential, and it often leads to humiliation, just as it has tonight." The billionaire's face flushed, not with anger, but with the first stings of real shame he had ever experienced. In public. His assistants shifted uneasily, while the crowd watched, fully aware that the tables had turned completely. The once dominant man was now powerless, not in wealth, but in influence over this moment. Applause erupted, louder than before. People who had laughed at her now stood, clapping, cheering, and some even whistled in admiration. It wasn't just respect. They were inspired. Some guests whispered about her brilliance, some about her courage, but all of them knew they had witnessed something extraordinary. She smiled faintly, not out of arrogance, but pure, quiet satisfaction. She had not sought revenge. She had only sought to prove a truth that many in the room had failed to see. True value isn't measured by appearance or wealth. It's measured by knowledge, perseverance, and character. The billionaire, now visibly shaken, attempted a last desperate move. I have money, power, influence," he stammered, trying to assert dominance one final time. But she interrupted gently, her voice calm, firm, and impossible to ignore. "And yet none of that makes you right. None of that gives you the right to demean or belittle someone who has worked harder than you could ever imagine." The words cut through the room like lightning. Even those who had feared the billionaire's wrath now felt a sense of justice served. He was humbled, publicly, irreversibly. The crowd's attention, once on him, now revolved entirely around her, the woman who had turned insult into empowerment, derision into admiration. Some of the younger guests, inspired by her poise and intellect, whispered to each other, "That's how you fight prejudice, that's how you rise." Others pulled out their phones, eager to capture the moment and share it, the story of courage, intelligence, and dignity in the face of arrogance. She paused, looking around the room one last time, letting the moment settle. "This isn't about proving superiority over someone else," she said softly, almost to herself. "It's about proving that determination, knowledge, and integrity will always outshine arrogance, wealth, and ignorance." The billionaire's face turned a deep shade of red. The audience, now fully captivated, cheered even louder. The woman had claimed her victory not through anger, but through proof and grace. She had not just won a challenge. She had rewritten the narrative for everyone watching. As she folded her folder and turned to leave, the energy of the room followed her like a wave. People clapped, cheered, and whispered her name. The billionaire, still rooted to the spot, could only watch as the woman exited, not just victorious but untouchable in her dignity and brilliance. In that moment, the lesson was clear to everyone. In attendance, power is fleeting, arrogance is exposed easily, but true brilliance commands respect forever. The gala had quieted, but the energy in the room lingered like electricity. People were still whispering her name, exchanging astonished glances, and replaying the confrontation in their minds. The billionaire, once the dominant figure of the evening, stood frozen, a picture of disbelief and humbled pride. He had underestimated her entirely, and now he understood. Wealth and power could never outshine courage, knowledge, and perseverance. The woman, however, moved with calm purpose. She didn't gloat or flaunt her victory. Every step she took exuded quiet confidence, the kind that commands respect without demanding it. She had proven her intelligence, shattered assumptions, and reversed the power dynamic, but she also carried a deeper mission: to use her knowledge and experience to make a real difference in the world. She began speaking to the crowd, her voice clear and compelling. "Tonight isn't about me," she said. "It's about proving that potential exists everywhere. It's about showing that circumstances don't define intelligence, and that determination can break barriers no wealth or arrogance can create." Her words resonated deeply. Many guests, inspired by her story, began to reflect on their own assumptions and biases. Some approached her quietly, seeking guidance or mentorship, recognizing the power of knowledge and resilience over superficial status. Others whispered to colleagues, promising themselves that they would never again judge someone by their appearance or background. Outside the spotlight, she had plans to give back to her community. The portfolio of projects in her folder wasn't just for show. It represented years of research and innovations aimed at helping underprivileged communities, improving education, and providing solutions where resources were scarce. The billionaire, once the symbol of arrogance, could only watch as she outlined ways she intended to empower others through the knowledge she had fought so hard to attain. The room, once focused on wealth and status, now celebrated human potential and resilience. Cameras flashed, videos were recorded, and social media buzzed with the story of the evening. Her courage and intelligence became an instant sensation, a viral moment that resonated far beyond the marble walls of the ballroom. She prepared to leave. She paused at the doorway, looking back at the billionaire. Her eyes, calm yet piercing, conveyed a silent message. Respect is earned, not bought, and intelligence cannot be mocked. With that, she walked out, leaving a room transformed, not by money or power, but by a single act of courage and brilliance. Viral. CTA for the video. What would you do if someone doubted your intelligence just because of your appearance or background? Comment below. Let us know how you would prove them wrong. And don't forget to share this story with someone who needs a reminder that courage and knowledge always win.